Ethan Cole had been working relief operations on Keshar for 8 months, long enough to become numb to tragedy's scale. The war between the Velthari Confederacy and the Jacqueline Empire had ended 6 months ago, but the aftermath was still being catalogued. Settlements destroyed, populations displaced, staggering numbers of widows and orphans. His job was unglamorous: processing aid distribution, coordinating refugee housing, ensuring resources reached those who needed them. He was good at it because he'd learned early that emotional distance was survival. Get too attached and you burn out. He was filing reports when she approached. A Velthari woman, 30 in human equivalent years, with subtle bioluminescent markings beneath her skin. Thin in a way suggesting recent hardship, markings showing colors he'd learned meant desperation. "Excuse me, you are human, yes, Taryn?" "Yes, can I help you?" She glanced around the crowded center. "I need to ask a personal question, somewhere private." Ethan's caution kicked in. Private conversations sometimes led to requests he couldn't fulfill. But her markings suggested terror, not danger. He led her to a small office and closed the door. She didn't sit. Instead, she stood very straight and asked with clinical directness, "Could you wed a bereaved extraterrestrial female, Taryn?" Ethan blinked. "I'm sorry, what?" "My name is Shaylin. My partner died in Keshar City's bombardment 7 months ago. In my culture, widows must remarry within 1 lunar cycle or be considered spiritually incomplete. We are barred from society, forbidden from raising our children, relegated to outcast status." Her markings flashed distress. "The deadline is in 4 days. I have asked 17 Velthari males. All refused. I have no dowry, no connections, no value. You are my 18th attempt. You're asking me to marry you so you don't become outcast." "Yes, I can offer nothing except my labor and minimal social standing. If you have requirements." "Yes." The word came before Ethan fully processed what he was agreeing to. Shaylin stopped mid-sentence, markings flashing to colors he didn't recognize. "Yes, yes, I'll marry you. If it keeps you from being cast out, if it means you keep your kids, then yes." Reflexive human response to suffering he could actually help. She stared in silence for 10 seconds. "You do not wish to negotiate. Discuss compensation, establish boundaries. Do we need to? You need help, I can help. What else is there?" Her markings shifted to shock mixed with hope. "I do not understand. You know nothing about me. You gain nothing. You're a person who needs help and I can provide it. That's enough reason." Ethan realized he was oversimplifying, but it was true. "When do we need to do this? What's the process?" Chapter 2. The ceremony was 3 days later, conducted by a civil official who looked uncomfortable performing an interspecies rite. Ethan had learned the minimum about what he was agreeing to. Velthari marriage was social contract for child-rearing stability and resource sharing. The ceremony was simple: vows spoken, documents filed, then the neurological bonding ritual. "It will be uncomfortable," Shaylin had explained. "Velthari bond empathically during marriage. We share emotional states, sense distress or joy, coordinates child-rearing. But you are human, your neurology may reject the bond entirely or experience disorientation. And if it doesn't work, we remain legally married without neurological component. Unusual but not unprecedented." The bonding happened at ceremony's conclusion. They placed hands on a crystalline sphere, quantum neural mapping to create empathic links. For Velthari couples, it was subtle background awareness. What Ethan experienced was not subtle. The device activated, and Shaylin's emotions crashed into his consciousness with overwhelming intensity. Grief for her partner, fear of outcast status, desperate hope, bone-deep exhaustion from surviving catastrophe. Too much. His neurology should reject it. Instead, it embraced the connection with intensity that made him gasp. Human neurology, shaped by Earth's social complexity, didn't just accept the bond, it amplified it. Suddenly, he wasn't just aware of Shaylin's emotions. He felt them with the same intensity she did, and she could feel his response. Shock, compassion, determination to help, overwhelming protective instinct. They both staggered when the device powered down. "Are you both well?" the official asked. "The bond should be subtle." "It's not subtle," Shaylin whispered, markings flashing overwhelmed confusion. "I can feel him, everything. His emotions are." She stared at Ethan. "You are not rejecting the bond, you are leaning into it. Why?" "I don't know, it just feels right. Like this is what my neurology wants." The official recorded the successful bond. They left as spouses, processing what just happened. This is not normal, Shaylin said. Velthari bonds are background awareness. This is, I can feel your determination to help me. Your protectiveness. She stopped walking. You genuinely care, not as transaction, as fundamental priority, and you didn't know me 3 days ago. Yeah, that's kind of what humans do. We form attachments quickly when we perceive vulnerability. Evolutionary thing. Most species would consider that irrational. Most species aren't humans. The bond continued asserting itself. Ethan found himself acutely aware of Shaylin's emotional states. Grief for her partner, cautious hope with her children, confusion about bond intensity. And she felt his responses. Satisfaction with aid work, frustration with bureaucracy, growing protectiveness neither expected. Chapter 3. Living together was complicated. Ethan's quarters were small, but regulations allowed married couples to request larger housing. They were assigned a two-room unit that felt too large and too intimate for strangers. Shaylin's children, 2 juveniles, 6 and 9 in human equivalent, moved in. Suddenly, Ethan was step-parent to traumatized children who didn't understand why their mother married a human. They ask why you, Shaylin explained one evening. I tell them necessity, that you saved us from outcast status, but I do not tell them about the bond. How do I explain when I do not understand it myself? What don't you understand? The intensity. Velthari bonds create mild empathic awareness, enough to coordinate parenting, not overwhelm individual identity. But I feel your emotions as clearly as my own, and you, her markings showed confusion. You accepted this immediately. The bond, the marriage, responsibility for children not yours. Why? Because you needed help, and I could provide it. Is it that complicated? Yes, most beings require reciprocity. Exchange of value. You gain nothing except obligations and permanent neurological connection to a stranger. Ethan thought about this. Maybe it's not rational. Humans don't do well watching people suffer when we can help. It feels wrong to stand by. So you married me out of guilt. No, I married you because the alternative was you losing your children. I had power to prevent that. It was the obvious choice. Shaylin's markings shifted to wonder mixed with disbelief. Your species is very strange. Yeah, we get that. They developed rhythm over weeks. Ethan continued relief work while Shaylin secured employment in agricultural cooperative. The children adapted slowly, and the bond deepened terrifyingly. Ethan started dreaming Shaylin's memories, fragments of pre-war life, moments with her partner, the bombardment. He woke feeling grief that wasn't his, processing trauma he hadn't experienced. Shaylin experienced the reverse. Flashes of Ethan's memories, his Earth childhood, reasons for relief work, emotional scars from disasters he couldn't prevent. They were sharing lived experiences. Involuntary intimacy neither knew how to process. This is not what Velthari bonds are supposed to do, Shaylin said during late-night conversation. We are experiencing empathic fusion at impossible levels. Is it hurting us? I do not know. It feels like you are becoming part of my identity and I of yours. This should be terrifying, but it is not. Why? Maybe because we're choosing to accept it instead of fighting. I did not choose this bond. I chose marriage of convenience. But you're not fighting it now. Neither am I. We're both leaning into this because it feels right, even if unexpected. Chapter 4. 3 months in, Ethan received reassignment offer to another world. Better pay, career advancement, opportunity he'd have taken without hesitation before. He brought it up that evening, expecting Shaylin to encourage him. This marriage was supposed to be temporary. Instead, her markings flashed immediate visceral distress. You want to leave. I'm not saying I want to. I got an offer and wanted to discuss it. We are married, you cannot simply leave. People get divorced. If this was about keeping you from outcast status, I've done that. You're legally married, have your children, have employment. I fulfilled my part. Even as he said it, the bond screamed that he didn't want to leave, that separating felt fundamentally wrong. Shaylin stared, and through the bond he felt her parsing whether he meant it. The bond is permanent. You understand? We cannot dissolve it even if we divorce. You will feel my emotions, I will feel yours for life. I know, and you are considering leaving anyway. I'm considering whether this is what you actually want or what you think you're obligated to accept. We didn't choose this bond. But that doesn't mean you're stuck with me if you don't want to be. The bond translated her response before she spoke. Hurt that he'd think she wanted him gone, fear of abandonment, and underneath, a realization she'd been avoiding. I do not want you to leave. Okay, then I won't. It is not that simple. It actually is. You want me to stay, I don't want to leave, so I stay, everything else is logistics. Her markings shifted through complex colors. You will turn down advancement, remain in difficult posting, continue with wife and children you never intended, because I said I do not want you to leave. Yes. Why? Because the bond isn't one-directional. I feel what you're feeling, fear I'll abandon you, hope I mean it. And my response, I want to stay because leaving would hurt you, and hurting you feels unacceptable now. That's what the bond does, makes your welfare my welfare. This is not rational. No, but it's real. Ethan reached for her hand carefully. Through contact, the bond intensified. We didn't choose this, but we're choosing to accept it, to build something, that counts. Shaylin was quiet then. On Velthar, we say, bonds reveal what was already present. The bond does not create affection, it amplifies what exists beneath awareness. Perhaps your immediate agreement was not random charity. Perhaps your neurology recognized compatibility before conscious mind did. Maybe, or maybe humans are bad at watching people suffer when we can help. Or maybe both things are true. You helped because that is what humans do. But you bonded this intensely, because specifically you and I are compatible in unanticipated ways. Ethan squeezed her hand, letting the bond communicate what words couldn't, that he was staying, committed, that what started as bureaucratic necessity had become something neither could imagine severing. 6 months later, Ethan turned down reassignment and accepted permanent position at Keshar. Shaylin's children stopped asking why she married a human and started calling him parent. The bond settled into something that still overwhelmed sometimes, but felt like foundation. They weren't conventional, didn't fall in love gradually or choose each other through courtship. Two strangers bound by bureaucratic necessity and neurological accident who chose to accept forced intimacy rather than fight it. But choice mattered. Every day they chose to stay, honor the bond, build partnership from raw materials of desperation and human instinct. Because sometimes profound partnerships begin not with love, but with simple human impulse to refuse letting someone suffer alone when you have power to change it. Ethan's affirmative answer wasn't charity. It was instinct. And that instinct had grown into something neither could name, but both recognized as permanent. On a refugee settlement on a border world, a human relief worker and Velthari widow built life together, not because they chose each other initially, but because they kept choosing each other every day after. The bond ensured they'd never be fully separate. But the choice to make that bond into something good rather than something to resent, that was all them. And somehow, impossibly, it worked.